How's everybody doing? Okay, just want to talk briefly about some of the wiring here. So this is not my favorite part of building a model, I'll just have you know right now. Although I think it's like relationships, there's always going to be something that you don't like about a person, but you love all the rest, right? But it's necessary to do the things that you don't really like to do in order to, like achieve the ultimate goal. So these are the lights I'm using. One of the types of lights I'm using, these LEDs, they're pre-wired with little bridge rectifiers, meaning it doesn't matter on this side whether it's positive or negative. You'll never burn these bulbs out because this will save you every time, okay? So these are by Evans Design. I'll give them a plug, Evans Design, because I like them. They make it easy. I want to make it easy because I'm not a light electrician guru, but I still know how to get the job done. And it's companies like this and Woodland Scenics that make it easier. Okay. Now, one thing I want to give you a tip, and I know Woodland Scenics won't like me for this, but Woodland Scenics has a really cool just plug system, right? You can expound like 4 of these off a blue box and then 4 green ones off of these. So you can multiply by 4. Now, you can do that if you want, but I want to use mostly Evans lights. They got nice small wires, and I think Woodland Scenics says these type of protection circuits as well, but their plugs are all pre-wired and the Evans are not, which is okay, because if you want to extend this wire, I use this Engineering N503OB insulated hookup wire black, and it's almost like, I swear it's the same wire. It really is. It's awesome. I didn't know that when I collected this stuff. I just wanted really small diameter wire, and that's what I use. You can find that around if you look for that. They have different colors, but I got black. I don't need to color code the wire because this particular, like they show you right here, resistors, capacitors, full wave bridge rectifiers, connector wires, lasts 100,000 hours, etc., 7 to 19 volts. Remember that. Don't go over 19 volts if you can help it, because you'll probably overload these. Although, well, I've tested these with 19 volts, but I'm running 17, so I'm good. Or 12 works good too for multiple lights. It's nice to have at least 1 amp. It's even better if you have a 2 amp power supply at 12 volts. You can find them if you look around bargain stores. You just cut the plug off and then wire a plug in and plug it in. Now, before I go any further with this, and just to close on this basically on how I show you how I run my wires. So these plugs, Woodland Scenics has these, like these are the old ones that they don't provide anymore. They're really nice though. They have these cheesy ones. I don't have one handy, but they're big plastic, sort of idiot-proof ones. But these I like them because they're small and they're just really good quality, but they must have, for economic reasons, changed and got a different supplier. And I don't like the new ones, Woodland Scenics. But anyway, they work. But I can hook up 4, like I can run these parallel. Okay, take the 4 of the one side and 4 of the other and run them negative, positive, and then turn on the dimmer and they work. They don't dim as good as like a dedicated larger LED for Woodland Scenics, but they do actually. Okay, so you don't need all that other stuff. You can use this with the Evans, okay? You can use both of these together, and I don't have to do any soldering here. Like if these are long enough and I have this plug in this system, there's no soldering required, okay? Because these have a pinch. You know what I mean? You just push that button in and then slide the wire in as far as it'll go, shove it right in deep like that, and say it's not coming out, and you shove this one in, turn the knob, the dimmer on, and it's good. So I have actually 6 into one of these, and then I'll reduce some of the other ones. But I can probably run 16 off of this. They're only small LEDs, they don't draw much. So that's what I'm doing for that. Now, just to show you some of the wires, all the car deck, the rail car deck, all are through this floor. And you can see that I made square conduit boxes. They're just square stock by Evergreen Plastics, and I cut the bottom off of one of them, and I cut the bottom off of that, glued it down, pushed all the wires in there. I just used some cloth or some tissue paper to hold the wires in because they're kind of springy. And what I'm going to do is now that they're in there and they're feeding through to the rear of the ferry, I'm going to slip this over top push it down and it's good, right? It's sort of hidden in a type of square conduit that doubles as benches when you look through the side windows. You know, it's not perfect, but it cleans all the wires up. And then back here, there's no windows except one on the side, but you won't see in here. It'll be covered by the crew quarters or whatever, or the galley, which is all my wire I can just sort of push down in here. And then I think I mentioned that just back here, this blacked out area, I got a couple of these that are going to go in there. I'm going to stack 2 of them, and they're blacked out too. So, okay. And then the other wires for the galley and the crew quarters and the front of the boat and the spots and everything will run up through the crew quarters and the galley, and you won't see them because they're just little porthole windows, and I'll just wire them through the, let's just call it the firewall. And it's good to go with a plug on the end, right? Okay. Like one of the challenges you're going to face when you want to do like a scale bezel, like these bezels I scratched out of square tubing and round tubing, including this one here, which I'm just, like I'll talk about this in a minute. I've got the other one up here installed, and then I have these 3 so far, and then I'm going to use the heavier bulbs underneath the car deck, etc. But for these ones here, the challenge is feeding the wire into the bezel, and I'll show you what I mean. Like with these particular ones, yes, they have the magnet wire, and they're very, you know, like here, let me just show you. So these are the pico chip. Like there, is that better? You can, like, look how small that is, right? They're quite bright, and they look good when the light is low, which is the way it should be, because if it was in the real world and it was high noon and these lights are on, you wouldn't see any effect from them. You'll only see them at dusk or when it gets dark. So that's good. So they, you know, they look scale and they perform like scale lighting, which I'll show near the end, the lighting. Now, the problem is though, is if you're going to feed this in, you got to feed it from behind because of this, basically this rectifier here. So these Evans ones come with a rectifier. They have resistors, bridge rectifiers, and they really are excellent quality. Like, and they have a vast array of choices of sizes. So I use these little pico chips for these sort of deck lights and this stair light. So this is a little piece of plastic tube, and you can see I reamed it out a little bit more with a drill bit to fit the LED, the little pico LED and the magnet wire into it. I painted the inside black first to block the light, you know, the light refraction that comes off the back of the LED, etc. I black it out the inside of the tube first, then I stick the little LED into the tube. You can see how this opening was cut first, just scalloped out of there, and then the end was plugged with a little piece of rod on the end of the tube. Virtually just a piece of scrap that you wouldn't even notice. It would be thrown in the garbage, right? But so that gets held in there with a bit of matte medium, and then I put a little bit of gloss GAC 500 over top. You can't see it, well, you can sort of see it there a little bit. So I mount it like this first, and then I test it, make sure it works. And then what I've done is I've taped off the front of the superstructure and scraped it down to the plastic, which is white. This is just raw plastic now. What I'll do is I will find the correct wire and I'll mount it. There's a little bit of cement like that, bit of plastic cement on the outside, maybe just a little skim of matte medium just to anchor it in good in place, and then I'll just paint this probably gray, and then it'll splash some light down onto the staircase here, really nice. Okay, but anyway, So I tried these little nanos in here and they're quite underwhelming, right? So I thought, nah, it's really important to me that these are really bright because they're these big, heavy, I don't know what the candle power is on them, but they light up the whole front of the ferry and the deck. Like that's what I want. And in daylight, when you're running them, you should be able to see them. They should be really bright, like a locomotive light. Now the problem is I've had to cut them. Like here's the bulb. You can see the difference, right? Like I'll hold them both up. See the difference in the size? So there's some sizes in between these as well, and there are ones a little bit larger than these. That's what I like about these Evans Design lighting is the choices that they have. Now you got to provide your own power supply here, and they clearly denote on here, 7 to 19 volts. So what I do is I just go to the Five and Dime or Sally Ann or discount store, right? And I find these hanging on the wall, and I cut the ends off. I just cut, like they usually come with a cylinder plug, so I just cut them off. I'll put my own plug on here. And then you can see on here, like just look at them when you go, like they're $5, right? Like if you go to buy these in a hobby shop, they're $40, right? So, it's quite a savings. You can find these for $5. I mean, I bought the Woodland Scenics ones, but not anymore, not when I can use these. So here's output 12 volts at 3 amps. So this is plenty for, a couple of dozen lights. Now, here's the thing with these particular bezels that I made. So just in closing, I just want to talk about this for a minute. These need to be really bright. The problem is they have built-in rectifiers. How are you going to get them to feed in there? Because at the rear, like these are external. I don't want them to look too crazy and bulky and toy-like. So in order to feed those through, I've had to cut the actual bulb, the wire, which now, oh, there it is. So I've had to cut them like this, right? From the actual rectifier, and then feed these through. And I got to go down through the nav cylinder. This is quite complicated in here. I pre-drilled some parts in here like during the build, and you just don't know because every model's different. So I thought, oh yeah, that'll be no problem, but it is a problem. But there are solutions. So in here, you can't see it totally, but there's a nav cylinder here with 2 holes in it that I'm going to push the red and green respective lights into there. But I have enough room to feed these wires through this pocket, which is dark black anyway, and through the top hole and down. So that worked out. Now, here's one thing I just want to say in closing, like a warning. Like if you're going to cut these to resolder them, make sure you mark them with paint, red and white, for example, and you solder them exactly the same. Because I burned out 3 by just, like I tested them, but I believe they rectify from the power end, but on the light end, there's something funny there. Like, I'm not an electrician, but I lost 3 bulbs doing that. So, and then I tested one by keeping the exact wire that you cut, and they worked. So I just want to let you know about that. So anyway, these all look really cool. You'll see these at the end as well. They're really bright even when the layout lights are on, which is what I want. Yeah, they've been a hassle and they're very troublesome to do all this, but I think they'll be worth it, okay? How's everybody doing? So, starboard is green and port is red. I literally have a screen up. Like, I've known this since I was a kid, but you think I would have the confidence to just do it without, out of sight and mind? I mean, like I have it pulled up on my screen right now. I'm looking over. Starboard is green. This is the starboard side of the ship. So this is the cylinders, the nav cylinders that I built, remember? This is a piece of 227 tubing, okay? Now, the first thing you want to make sure is, or some of the things you're going to run into with lights, is you want to make sure that the light fits in the tube. This is close enough. I don't know what the scale dimension is, but it doesn't really matter. But you see how that light will fit in there? So I already know that, okay? That's all I need to know. Yeah, so these are glued and welded in now. Last night they're solid as a rock. They're never coming out. And so what I'm going to do is, before I cap the top of this, is I want to drill right down through into the forward. It'll go down into where the cabin is, where the lights or the wires will run eventually out of view. Okay, so I'll make sure that I'll use a round file, clean that up, and then I can slide the LED up inside from inside of here when I mount the nav lights on both sides. Okay, they're look like little 50-gallon drums. Actually, these are probably not quite 50-gallon drum size, but they're pretty large. And there's 2 holes in there, and there's a reason for that, okay? Because when you push the light up in, like, it's not going to cover both holes, but you use the bottom hole, like the actual cylinder's made like the prototype, but you push the LED, these ones right here, the U15s that I like by Evans, and they're green. Now, these are on the shelf for years probably. You don't have to use these. You can use a clear one and just paint it with, to me, a clear green X25. And then I'm going to use GAC 500. I'm going to grab some here. It's just white milk. It's really just canopy glue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just gently, because I have the actual LED sort of propped up from inside the cavity there, like under the bridge. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some of this in there, because this forms a window and it will dry crystal clear and reflect the green more than what it is without it. So it'll make the whole cylinder glow green, but really bright on the top, which is what you see anyway. It actually looks nicer live than on the camera, because I had to adjust the ISO so that this wasn't too dark. I want you to see what's going on, but I also want you to see that I'm getting the starboard side right, okay? Starboard is green, right? Port is left, like 4 letters in port, 4 letters in left. And then what's the other rule of thumb for right? But anyway, I know it. Like, I'm confident now. I'm looking at the screen on the computer, the Nautical Guild, right? If they're wrong, I'm wrong. But anyway, this is really cool, because now I'm getting, oh, this is, like, I can't express how much of relief I'm feeling now at this point. Getting lights in this and everything working out. And I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but this glazing in this window here, that was a bear to achieve. Believe me, it's one big panel, and I'd already built like a glazing shelf, like a slot. And could I get it in? Doing dry runs before I even put this structure together, it went in every time, but you know how it is. Tried to get it in, couldn't get it in. I kept fiddling, using tape to hold it and getting my hands up down through here, because I pulled that plate. Remember the plate that holds the bridge that I factored in earlier, that must come out so I can do all this? Thank goodness that plan worked, because they don't always work when you plan things, you know. But anyway, so I was pushing it in there, and it clicked, and I knew I got it, right? Okay. Anyway, this nav light was similar. It kept falling down, and then I used this stiff wire. Like, this wire is really stiff, so you can use it as a stilt to hold LEDs up in place. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let that dry and then fill it 1 or 2 or maybe 3 times, so it's nice and flush with the canister there, and it should be really awesome, okay? The starboard is right, and it's green.